Good morning, it's Beth from Ruth Stitchery and ruthstitchery.com. And today we're doing something I think that's kind of fun. You know, we've mentioned before there's so many tools out there that maybe you know how to use them, maybe you don't, but we've kind of picked a few that are kind of deceptive in that you look at it like, oh, I don't need that. And so we picked a few of them that we want to talk to you about, some of these smaller tools that are out there that have multi-purposes that aren't very expensive, and we just kind of wanted to share how you use them. So the first one, you've probably heard me or one of our other staff talk about it, but it is the Quilter's Magic Wand from Studio 180. You use it, it is a marking tool, but I'm going to show you all the different uses that I have started using this for. We have shown the Quilter's Magic Wand in the video that we demoed the wing clipper tool from Studio 180, but I wanted to show it to you again because I just use this all the time. So this is a 1/2 inch wide. It also, if you can see, has a little line that goes down the center that's etched into this tool. So this tool has a couple different uses. The main one basically is to draw your sew lines when you are either doing half square triangles or if you're going to do flying geese in that no waste method. So that little etched center line gets lined up on your points, and then you draw these sew lines onto the fabric. So you can see that I've drawn the lines. So these lines are a 1/2 inch apart, a 1/4 inch from the center. And so that way when you lay these down, you've got a clear line that you can sew on. So this is the flying geese. You can also use this for half square triangles. If you prefer to draw the lines you're going to sew on rather than just one line and sewing a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. But the other thing I think is great about this tool is this is 12 inches long. And so that 12-inch finished size of our quilt blocks, this is so easy to just pick up. If you're not near a mat or you don't have one of your rulers with you, you can pick this up, lay it down on your block to make sure that you are in that 12-inch. So just know this is 1 foot, and so you can also use it to kind of check your measurements. I know you have heard me mention this tool. It is probably one of my all-time favorites, and that is the purple thing. It has so many uses, and I want to show you all the different ways that I like to use this tool. The next one I want to show you is the one I told you is my favorite, and that is the purple thing. So, of course, the first time I learned about this tool was I took a free motion quilting class, and they used this tool very simply to pull their bobbin thread up. So basically they told us to go ahead and put our needle down into our fabric and come back up, and then use this tool to help pull that bobbin thread up. And so that is how I became aware of this tool. And so I bought it, of course, that day so that I could use it. However, that is just one little simple way to use this tool. The other way I use this tool a lot is as a stylus. So if you've got maybe something small that you are sewing and you want some help taking it through your machine, you can basically use this tool to help you guide. If you've got pieces or blocks that you're sewing together that has a lot of seams in it, you know, we always can get caught on our presser foot, and so I use this part of the tool to kind of get under there and keep my seam flat as I'm going over it. On the other end of this tool, there is this little square that mine has a little bit of glue on it, but this little square is a 1/4 inch square. And so I use that all the time to check a seam, make sure that my 1/4 inch seam is accurate. It's also flat. So the reason I have glue stuck to this is when I'm doing English paper piecing or some applique where I am gluing and folding over an edge, I use this flat end of this tool all the time to fold over, and it works perfectly. And then it also has this little space here on the end that can be used like a bodkin. So I can, believe that that's a 1/2 inch. So if I'm making something that I have folded in half, I can run it through and then iron it from one end as I'm pulling this through. You can also use it to turn something inside out. And I use this end a lot to poke out corners when I'm making a pillow or a bag and I've got to poke those corners out. So many uses for this tool that's so inexpensive. It's the purple thing. This is the sewing machine seam guide. This little tool helps you on your sewing machine get the perfect 1/4 inch seam, other measurements of your seam. It's a tool that I love to give to my beginners because it just gets them started. And let me show you how to use it. Okay, so this is that sewing machine seam guide. And you can see that it has 5 little holes that are drilled into this little tool. And each one of those holes is a measurement. So the first one is the 1/4 inch. There's 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, and 3/4. So of course with quilting, that 1/4 inch is the one that we're using most often. If you do some bags, a lot of times a bag pattern will have you do 3/8. I know a lot of clothes patterns have you do 5/8. So all of these measurements are represented, and just they're used to help you make sure that your needle is in the correct position and that you are able to have some sort of guide. So of course you don't sew through this, but the first step you do is you place this down, and I'm just going to do the 1/4 inch, and I'm going to slowly bring my needle down so that it is in that first hole, which is the 1/4 inch mark. And then I'm going to go ahead and lower my presser foot. Nope, it didn't work because I hit the wrong button. I'm going to lower my presser foot. So now this seam guide's not going to move. So it's now secured in place. And then whatever I'm going to use to kind of mark on my machine, I like using washi tape because I can place it down. I can pull it up whenever I want. It's not going to leave any residue. Painter's tape does the same thing. There's lots of seam guide tape out there that you can use to place on your machine, but now this is positioned. I can put whatever I want to use as my tool and mark this here, and then I'll go ahead and take this tool out, and that is how you use the seam guide. This next tool is fairly new. It's called the quilt binding spool. It's this flat plastic that it is a great way to store your binding before you're waiting to put the binding on your quilt. So I will show you how you get this wrapped on here, and I'll show you how I use it. The next one is the Wonder Clips. I know I've mentioned these before, but I'd like to show you that there are so many uses, and I use these for so many different things. The Wonder Clips, let's look at how you can use these. This is the quilt binding spool, and I just wanted to show you when you take it out of the package, it has these 2 lines or 2 holes that are inside this plastic spool, and I like to use it just to kind of hold your binding in place. So I come up almost like a belt buckle and come down, and then that way I can then start to wrap this, and then it just holds your binding completely secure. And so you can put your whole binding on here, and then it keeps it neat and saved for when you're ready to actually sew it onto your binding. onto your quilt. And so when I go to sew my binding onto my quilt, I keep it on this spool, and I may just open about this much off of the spool, and then I'll go to my sewing machine and I'll place my binding down, and then that way I don't have this big long train of binding just sitting there. I've got part of it is still contained, and then I can sew a little bit, and then I can just sort of unroll this as I go. So I love this. I want to say this is maybe $9 for this spool, and so it's not super expensive to have several, at least maybe 2 or 3 that you are working on, waiting for that quilt to come back from the quilter or to quilt it yourself, and you've got the binding all ready to go. So that's the quilt binding spool. And then the Wonder Clips, I want to show you, I have several different ways that I use these, and certainly it is not the only ways that you can use them, but I wanted to show you how I use them. So these little Wonder Clips are fantastic for clipping your binding if you are going to be hand stitching it to the back. So my binding is stitched on, and then I have folded it over, and I've started putting the clips in. So one, if you use pins, you know that sometimes as you start to hand stitch, you poke yourself with that sharp pin. So this sort of alleviates that. But the other reason I like to use these for my binding is I will put these on my binding, and I might clip a whole side one day and then leave it, and then the next night maybe pick it up and start, because it sort of presses it into this position. And so as I pull these off, I'm not still like wrangling that binding back over to the back. It is now kind of rested in that place with these binding clips. So absolutely love that. The other way that I use these binding clips is if you have made any of the Buy Any bags, or any bag that you need to use either a foam or a fusible fleece or 2 layers of batting, so you've got that thick interfacing in there, and then you need to both sides have it in, and then you have to sew those together. It's very difficult to just put a pin in there, and also a pin is going to sort of warp this. And so I had learned to use these Wonder Clips instead of pins, because all this is doing is it's kind of smushing it together and holding it in place without any sort of distortion. And so now I can put as many as I need, and then I can put this into my machine, and then I'm just pulling these clips off. So it's a great way if you have lots and lots of layers that you need to sew together to keep them in place. Okay, and then finally I use them as an organization tool. So yesterday I started to cut this out. This is a little pattern called Fierce Ladies, and so I was cutting out all of the fabrics for each one of these houses. And so once I got them together and I knew, okay, here's the house, here's the roof, here's my door, all the pieces that I need to make that one house, and then I've just put a clip in it. So I will use these to keep myself organized after I've started cutting a project. Sometimes I add a little piece of paper or post it underneath the little clip to tell me what it is, if I think it's going to be a long time before I grab it. But they're fantastic to hold some pieces together that you've cut that you don't want to get mixed up with something else. So these are just a few ways that I like to use the Wonder Clips. I'm sure there's lots of other ways to use them. I'm sure there's lots of ways to use a lot of the tools that we've shown you today, but hopefully you have enjoyed seeing some of these kind of smaller notions that are out there for you that really can be used for multiple purposes for not a lot of money, and I just wanted to share that with you. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share our videos, and thank you so much for liking our Facebook page and following us on Facebook. Thank you so much.